Hello, everyone, and welcome to this First Home Buyer webinar presentation. Hello, my name's Louise Lucas, and it's fabulous to have you here with me tonight. And as we're waiting for more people to join us this evening, could you kindly type into the chat bar where you are listening from? So if you can let us know, so give us a call if you can tell us where you're listening from and to us from in Australia. And I hope you're all from Australia. I'll tell you why. We get a lot of people applying from overseas, but our specific help is definitely for Australians. Hi from Melbourne. Hello to James. There's quite a few of you there. Please say hello. And so while more of you join us, I want to thank you who arrived early. Your punctuality is really appreciated, and it's great to see who the early birds among us are and who are eager to learn all about how they can buy their first home within 30 days. So by typing in the chat box to tell me where you're from, it helps confirm you can clearly hear me and see me on your screen. So please let me know where you're tuning in from. Oh, hello, Nicole from the southeast corner of Queensland. Hi, Aram from Melbourne. Thank you for joining in promptly. I really appreciate it. And as I progress through the presentation, I'm sure, oh, hi, Marcia from Sydney. I've just been in Sydney. Boy, did not stop raining. Constant rain, wasn't it? Anyway, I know, I'm sure you're sick of it. I was. And the funny thing was, while Melbourne's a lot colder, the funny thing is, it's actually had sunny days, so crazy. But anyway, Sydney was very miserable wet. I'm sure lots of questions are going to pop up for you as we go along. So I want you to know that at the end of the presentation, I will be hosting a short Q&A session where you can ask all your questions and I will do my best to answer them for you. On your pen and paper, jot down those questions as I progress through the presentation. Hold your questions and I will do my best to answer them all at the end of the presentation. Now, it's my intention to keep the chat bar open throughout the duration of the webinar and our time together. However, can I ask for everyone's cooperation in maintaining a respectful atmosphere in the chat? Because occasionally we encounter individuals who perhaps after a hard day's work are enjoying a few drinks and might not be so respectful of others and can carry on and write some drivel. So in the chat bar. So I ask if you notice anyone disrupting or our learning environment, I'd appreciate your assistance in gently encouraging them to either refocus or leave the webinar. And now before I start, so that I don't waste anyone's time here, I want to be very clear about who this webinar is for and what you can expect to get out of this webinar. So this webinar is specifically designed and created for people who are truly passionate about the idea of buying their first home and understand that there is a process and practical steps to follow that can turn your dream of home ownership into a reality. It's for people who understand that in order to get something you really want, it takes some effort. It takes effort from the perspective of creating a plan to get what you truly want. And it takes an effort from the perspective of having to alter some of the things that you're doing right now with the money that you earn and learning about the cleverest way to accelerate the growth of that money so that you are in a position to buy your first home. And so if you are accepting that there is a process to follow and you are passionate about wanting to own your own home in the shortest possible time, then understand I have created this webinar specifically for you. And with that said, I also have to mention right out front that if you have no interest in creating a plan for yourself and learning how to make it easy to stick to your plan, then I must say it's unlikely that you're going to get any value from this webinar at all. So this is for people who are looking to create a strategy and a plan that they can stick to so that they can be assured that as each day passes, they are one day closer to their dream of home ownership, because there is a right way of becoming a first home owner in a short period of time, just as much as there is a right way of staying in the position that you might be in right now, and that is perhaps renting someone else's home for the rest of your life. And so let me set an agenda around what's going to be happening in this webinar presentation. The webinar will go for around 60 minutes. And now, as you would understand, in 60 minutes, it will be difficult for me to address every single item associated with getting into your first home fast and overcoming all the obstacles that might be before you today. But what I am going to do over the next 60 minutes is to provide you with a solid foundation so that you can get started on your home ownership journey. And for the purpose of transparency, I want to let you know right up front that at the end of this presentation, I will very briefly talk about an opportunity for those of you who might want to work with me more closely, who may want more help and guidance, and who may want to leverage my experience of one of Australia's top mortgage brokers and first home buyers coaches. So I want to be completely transparent with you so that at the end of this presentation, there will be a small sales pitch, but I'm telling you right up front in the interests of transparency. And so in the chat bar, type yes if you like transparency. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, James. Terrific. Great, Marcia. Okay, so now, thank you, Nicole. Yes, now before we dive in deeper, I want to let you know that this presentation is for educational purposes only and should not be in any way construed as specific financial advice. And in the event that you feel that you need specific financial advice, then can I encourage you to seek out that advice from a suitably licensed and qualified practitioner, of which I am one. So now that you're all here, let me again state my intention for this webinar, and that is to show you everything that you need to know about how to get into your first home fast and how to overcome the obstacles that hold most people back from achieving their dream. And as you can see from the slide in front of you, this presentation is called How You Can Achieve Your Dream of Home Ownership in Just a Matter of 30 Days, following my 5-step first home owner system. And if that is the result that you aspire to get for yourself, I want to let you know that there are 5 steps that I'm going to take you through in this webinar. Now, these 5 steps are crucial to accomplishing the goal of home ownership. But here is the good news. Now, if you follow each of these 5 steps and implement on each of them, and if you keep at the full front of your mind that goal of getting into your first home, I promise you that regardless of your financial situation today, regardless of how much money you have saved or haven't saved, I promise that you'll be on the shortest pathway with the least amount of resistance to buy your first home. So with that said, here are the 5 steps of my PROPS first home owner system that I'm going to walk you through today. I will run through each of them briefly and then circle back to each one and go through them in more detail. Step 1 is preparation. So preparation is all about understanding your goals, intentions, and what's realistic, shifting from unsure to focused, and creating a timeline to buy your first home. And while a lot of people love the idea of buying their first home, the concept of goal setting and creating an action plan is really the glue that holds everything together and makes sure that you get what you really want. The next step is readiness. Get your finances, paperwork, and mindset ready. Move from nervous to prepared. Determine what type of home you are willing to buy, how much it's going to cost, and how much money you need to have saved. Step 3 is options. Learn about loan options, team roles like conveyancers and building and pest inspectors and cost structures. Move from feeling overwhelmed to informed. Find the smartest and most practical ways of saving, accessing a deposit, and other assistance packages, particularly all those government guarantees. Put yourself in the best position possible to qualify for the maximum amount of money that you can borrow. Step 4, property power. I want you to be able to research, inspect, question, and compare like a pro. Move from confused to confident. How to deal with agents, create an action plan so that you can be in a position to make an offer and buy your first home. Step 5, settlement and security. Finalize the deal and step into ownership with a plan. Move from uncertain to in control. Know the costs of living in your own home and how you will cope with all that. Now, the encouraging thing that I'd like to share with you is that in the past 18 years, I've been teaching people these exact same 5 steps, and I'm thrilled and very humbled with the number of people who have just followed these steps, who today are in the home that they never thought they would own. And just as an example, so that I can keep your enthusiasm level high about the reality of you getting into your first home in the next 30 days, I'd like to share 3 quick case studies with you of people who not so long ago were just like you. So my clients, Dave and Joe, a young couple from Queensland, attended a property buying conference where they connected with us and my company, the Property Education Company, and they had a 10% deposit saved, but they faced the challenge of paying lenders' mortgage insurance. And my strategic advice led them to negotiate the property's price effectively, saving them a significant amount. And my guidance throughout the process provided them with confidence and clarity, and they were so happy in their new home. I'd love you to meet Hannah. Now, this second case study that I would like to inspire you with is when Hannah was near 30 with a great income and great lifestyle to match. And she aspired to own her own home, but didn't want to affect her lifestyle too much. And I know many people feel that way. So despite the debts such as help debt and afterpay and credit cards, we managed to sort through all these items quickly, and she was able to buy with guarantor support. And finally, Nick, Nick is a young electrician. He had a small deposit, but managed with our guidance to buy his first home, taking out what I like to call the triple. He managed to take advantage of the first home buyer's guarantee scheme, so he didn't have to pay lender's mortgage insurance, as he only had a 5% deposit, no stamp duty due to buying under $600,000 in Victoria, and he received $10,000 first home buyer's grant when buying a home less than 5 years. So established, but not brand new. But it had never been sold before, and that's the key. And with 18 months, he was able to release equity and buy his first investment property. So now, once again, I've shown you these 3 case studies to serve as an inspiring example for any person or couple sitting on this webinar who wants to buy their first home, yet thinks it could be somewhat impossible. Just by showing you these 3 case studies, I want you to know that if you follow this structured approach, regardless of how difficult you think your circumstances are, you too can turn the dream of owning a home into a reality. So can I get you to type into the chat if you would like to achieve the same results as Dave and Joe, Hannah, or Nick? Let me know what you think. Great. Yes, definitely, says Donna. She's right on it. I hope the rest of you are still there and awake. Yes, absolutely. Yes, great. Elsa, fantastic. Thanks, Nicole. I'd love my own little home. Great. Of course you would. So let's get into it. Now, let me see. So my name is Louise Lucas. I'm the CEO and founder of the Property Education Company. We're based in Melbourne, but we operate across Australia and have clients from Kununurra, Darwin, Queensland, Perth, all the way. I started my finance journey all the way back in 1985 as a teller at the Commonwealth Bank, and over the decades, I've built a business that combines 2 of my greatest passions, property and education. I hold an MBA and a graduate diploma in tertiary education, but what really matters is how I use that knowledge to make buying your first home less confusing and far more empowering for you. And as a mum of 2 boys, one of whom has already made his way onto the property market and another who's about to, I know firsthand just how tough and overwhelming it can feel to get started. And that's why I'm here, to help you understand how the system works, how to make an offer with confidence and without getting ripped off, and how to take smart, practical steps towards owning a home you love. And when I'm not helping people into property, you'll find me singing with my glee club, performing across the globe and living life to its fullest, because I just love travel. So now, on numerous occasions so far in this webinar, I've talked about a time frame of 30 days to success. And I want to make particular note of the fact that 30 days or 3 months is simply an arbitrary aim point by which people on average incomes can go from scratch and find themselves in a position where they're able to buy their first home. That said, there are a number of variables associated with this aim point. Things like your income, your cost of living, and those types of things can vary over time. So they can vary the time frame that it's going to take you to get into your first home. But however, one thing's for sure, whether it takes you 30, 60 or 90 days or a year, the principles that I'm about to teach you have been proven time after time with client after client that I've worked with. And you can be assured that if you follow these steps, that you will be on the fastest possible way to buy your first home. Now, I'd like you to type into the chat bar after seeing those case studies. Let me know your opinion. Do you believe that despite having little savings in one's bank account, that a dream of home ownership can become a reality within 30 days, provided they have the right financial knowledge, a strategy and a plan that together with the right guidance will help them to achieve their goal of buying their first home? So if you believe that is possible for you, give me a yes in the chat bar. That's how skeptical, but I'm seeing others that saying yes. It seems too good to be true, but willing to find out. That's great. I'm seeing lots of yeses and yes. And despite seeing all those yeses, I also want to acknowledge that it's fair to accept that most first home buyers will go through waves of getting enthusiastic and excited about buying their first home, and at times could become a little despondent about the challenges that they meet along the way. The reality is that unfortunately for many first home buyers, their initial enthusiasm gets knocked out of them because they buy into what they read, see and hear in the media about escalating house prices and the sizable deposit that one needs to get into their first home. And now, for those of you on this call, I want to tell you this. Regardless of what interest rates are and regardless of what home prices are, I want to assure you, based on my experience, that if you follow the steps that I'm about to share with you in this webinar, you can set a plan in place that will take you from where you are right now to accomplishing the dream of buying your first home. So let's now transition into looking at some of the commonly held myths that tend to hold people back from venturing into a strategy that will get them into their first home in record time. And I would like to show you some of the strategies on how to overcome those challenges. And one of the biggest ways to overcome the negativity that can circulate in your mind about how difficult this task could be is to focus on your own reason as to why you want to purchase your home. I want you to think about what owning that first home will mean to you. What will it mean to your partner if you have one, or what will it mean to your children if you have kids? Because it's crucial to get in touch with the importance to you of owning your first home. In my experience of dealing with first home buyers, a lot of people don't know why they're purchasing their own home and why they think it's important to them. For a lot of people, buying their first home is just part of a process that they get caught up in because they find themselves in a relationship, or they might get married, or they have a child, and they might want to keep up with their friends. You need to move beyond the superficial reasons and discover and understand why home ownership is important to you. Knowing this will keep you strong in resolve to stick to the 5-step process. Because if you don't know why buying a home is important to you, it's likely that you will get caught up in the negative news cycle. You will get caught up in all the talk about what's happening with interest rates and house prices. And there's a risk of getting caught up in all this negative emotion that will be unhelpful if you want to stay true to your cause. And so it's worth taking some time and sitting with your own thoughts, or chatting with your spouse or partner and exchanging with each other why buying a home to you is so important. And when you do that, you're probably going to come up with some things that you're like done with renting, or you're done with dealing with a landlord and being told what you can and cannot do in a property. You might come up with the fact that you've got a growing family. Maybe your kids need more space, or maybe you just need an extra room. So when you process thoughts like this, what will happen is that you develop a sense of clarity as to what actually is driving you. And you will place a new level of importance about developing a strategy to achieve your goal. And when you come to a point of clarity around these things, it's important that you write them down on a piece of paper, because the process of writing down slows up what's happening and removes you from that constant churning inside your head. And when you have your key reasons why you want to buy your home, you start to develop some clarity and a clearer sense of purpose. Because without these reasons in front of you, you're going to find that as house prices increase in value, you're going to become somewhat despondent with pursuing your goal. But I can assure you that you're going to become calmer and you're going to develop a greater sense of purpose when you develop clarity around why you want to own your own home so much. Which leads us to the first step towards home ownership, is preparation. And that first step is all about understanding your goals and what's realistic to own an asset that you call home. Now, a goal is simply a dream with a deadline, and you can't set a deadline until you start by understanding your current position. So positioning yourself towards home ownership comes with the requirement of assessing three important things. Where are you really at financially? Why getting clear on your financial foundations is important, and what to assess: income, debt, credit score, and goals. The result, a clear, honest financial position to move forward from. The first aspect is having some level of savings behind you that can be used as a deposit for your home. Gone are the days when a bank would lend you 100% of the value of a home. We haven't seen that for over 15 years. You need to have some skin in this game. The second most important point is that you need to have a realistic view of your financial foundation and the budget you have in mind as to how much you want or can spend on a home. Remember, this is your first home, not your last home. And we've got to realize that this home can be used for an investment property in the future. And that's often a great way to look at what this is. And it's a stepping stone into your next property. And of course, in order to answer this question, you need the third element, what to assess. It includes things like how much money you or your partner earn, what debts you have, your credit file, your financial goals. This largely governs how much you can borrow, which in turn tends to lead to a conclusion on how much you can spend. And the third attribute is planning, is to have a timeline which answers the question of when all this will be possible. So let's start with the first attribute, and that is, where are you really at financially? Do you have some level of savings behind you that you can use as a deposit? And positioning yourself towards home ownership comes with the requirement of I've told you that, I'm sure. So let's go forward. Oh, I love Donna's reason. I want to own a home for my son, and that is ours. So over renting, stability, and Donna's right. Happiness, pride, safety, and security. So most people, and it's true, find it really difficult to save, and to save for two reasons. They just don't know how to save, and they don't know how to pace themselves when they save. And it's actually much easier paying a mortgage because it's forced savings. So I often think it's easier to get into a home quicker than you've got forced savings because you're making money on your home. Now, saving a lump sum of money can be very simple, and it is accomplishable by anyone. But if you've ever caught an aeroplane to go on holiday, think about what you do in the lead up to catching that plane. The first thing you have to do is have a destination in mind. So let's say you're going to Bali, you've looked online and you've looked at the websites, and you have a very clear picture of what the destination is going to look like. You start imagining you and your loved ones there at the destination. You picture yourself perhaps lying on a beach chair by the pool, drinking a cocktail, or you picture yourself walking along a pristine beach without the noise that your day-to-day life has. But these mental pictures are important to you at the start of your journey. And so likewise, what I suggest to people in the first instance is to go and either look online or go to some open homes on the next Saturday or Sunday and start taking pictures of the type of home that you would like to see yourself living in. And I suggest to all my first home buyer clients that they take those pictures and put them on the fridge door as a daily reminder of why they are doing what they're doing. Now, back to the whole idea of going on holiday to Bali. You have your picture in mind as to what you're going to do when you get there, when you set the date as to when all of this is going to happen. And so the process of getting into your first home comes with creating a timeline or a deadline about when that will be the day that you own your first home. Deadlines can be changed, they can be flexible. However, setting one is an important step to committing to a process. This is where the 30-day strategy comes into its own, because setting a deadline is like knowing that your aeroplane is leaving for Bali at 10 a.m. on a Friday. It begins to shape everything that you do. It begins to become a priority in your life. And when you commit to that priority with a sense of purpose, you become enthusiastic and motivated to achieve that goal. Now, when it comes to saving a deposit, there are a number of schemes and assistance programs which you may or may not be able to qualify for, and time doesn't permit me to go into each of those schemes here tonight. And I'm sorry. Yes. So let's go into step 2, and that is to determine what type of home and how much is going to cost and how much money you need to have saved. But for the purpose of this webinar, which in essence is to demonstrate the purpose of how you save, I'm going to use an example of buying a home for $600,000. Now, the home that you may want might be worth more, it might be worth less. It doesn't matter. I'm just picking that figure as an example. In many situations, if you were to buy a home for $600,000, it's likely that you're going to have needed to save between 5 and 10% of the value of that home. So in this example, we're looking at a figure of between $30,000 to $60,000. So let's get started at the lower end and assume you have zero savings, but you and perhaps a partner are earning reasonable income. So let's say $80,000 a year each. And so you have a joint household income of $160,000. You have the picture of the home or the apartment that you wish to buy on your fridge door, and you have a timeline that says that the worst for the purpose of this savings example, you have 180 days in order to achieve it. So in real terms, 6 months isn't that far away. Now, if you want to achieve that goal and you are seriously passionate about achieving that goal, let me show you how to do it. Let's say your goal is to save up, as I said, a figure between 30 and 60. So we're saying 37. And let's imagine that right now you've got $1,000 or less saved in your bank account. So if we divide 37,000 by 180 days, that means we need to have a daily savings target of around $205 to get there. Now, that might seem a daunting amount at first, but let me show you different ways of being able to save that amount of money. So a person earning $80,000 a year after tax will bring home an income of $1,222 each week. And so if you were a couple, this means a joint collective income coming into your bank account of $2,444 a week. And if we were to divide that $2,444 a week by 7 days, that means we bring in $348 a day. And if we were to subtract the 205 a day from the 348, that will bring in a day, it would leave us with $148 a day to live on. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, how can I possibly live on $143 a day when I have so many expenses to meet? Now, this is the time we circle back to what we wrote down on a piece of paper, which was the core reason as to why we wanted to get into our own home in the first place. So depending on how much you want that end outcome, human nature is such that if the demand is strong, people will find a way to do it. Which brings me to my next question, and that is, how much does it cost you to live per day? Now, I know plenty of people who have worked out how to live on $143 a day. So let me start by telling you it is well possible, no matter what your circumstances are and how impossible you think it is. However, the task does become impossible if you have no idea how much it costs for you to live each week. And this is where it's important to create for yourself a household budget. But people perceive that creating a household budget creates restraint of the type of lifestyle and life that one could lead. So let's get some feedback in the chat. What comes to mind when you hear the word budget? Who connects the word budget with restriction? surely. I hate the word budget myself, I know, but really it's actually, yes, I understand it's the cost of living, but a budget, actually knowing your budget and where your money goes is absolutely vital for this process. And so I want you to look at it the opposite as being true. A budget is a source of liberation. It's akin to having a fuel gauge on your car. It allows you to track your money and to know how much fuel you have left. And if you were to drive a long distance, say between Sydney and Melbourne, you would be able to look at the fuel gauge and know whether or not you're going to have enough fuel to get there, or whether you need to stop at a petrol station or charging station to refuel. And so having a household budget and being able to track your expenses and being able to know where every single dollar that you earn goes is the first step to achieving what it is that you want to achieve. And so for this period of having 180 days, perhaps you need to look at things and go, how can we live on one wage and save all the other? Or perhaps when you do a household budget, you will see that there maybe is a shortfall of $20 or $30 a day that you need to find from somewhere else. When you can see that having a household budget, you're going to be able to identify exactly where you're at, and if you are falling short, you're going to be able to come up with a strategy to pick up the difference. Now, that $20 or $30 a day may mean perhaps working an extra hour or two at work, picking up some sort of side hustle that gives you an extra $20 or $30 a day on average. I know plenty of first home buyers who have started walking their neighbours' dogs or mowing lawns or doing some freelance work for just that period of 6 months to pick up the difference between what they could save and what they needed to save. My point is that by creating a budget and working out what your numbers are, you are taking the first step to empowering yourself as to what you can achieve and help you achieve your goal. But with these things stepped out on a piece of paper or on a simple spreadsheet, the good thing is that you're going to bring a sense of reality to your plan and a timeline and a deadline. Now, when it comes to saving, it's important that you can create some discipline, and that makes it easier not to spend what you save. Human nature is such that people will spend the money they have access to unless you are extremely disciplined. And so the next step is to create some boundaries around your savings habits so that you're not tempted in a moment of weakness to take that money and spend it on some bright, shiny object. So step 3 is to find the smartest and most practical way of saving, accessing a deposit and other assistance packages. Now, there are a number of strategies that I teach my first home buyer clients to do, which are clever things like setting up a bank account with a different bank and not signing up for internet banking, and cutting up the debit card so it becomes difficult to access the money unless you really had to. And call that bank account My Home Deposit, because banks love seeing that when you actually apply for a loan that you had an account that said home deposit. You could do something like create an automatic debit that occurs every week from your regular account where your pay goes into of a set amount, or often your pays can be split to different banks. It's quite often and common now that some payrolls will allow that. So it comes out the same day as your pay goes in and is not available to access at a time of weakness. Now, there is an important philosophy that I want you to think about here, and it comes from the same idea that flight attendants tell you every time you get on an aeroplane. It's put your oxygen mask on first before you start helping others. In other words, pay yourself first before you pay anyone or anything, because remember, you are embarking on a strategy to achieve a goal and your focus needs to be maintained. You need to keep repeating to yourself, I need to save $205 a day, for example. So when it comes to purchases like going out for dinner or buying the next latest tech gadget, all that stuff is fun to do. However, our priority is to get into our own home. And so we need to save that $205 a day. And the decisions that you make moving forward aren't to be seen as sacrifices. See them as a step forward towards achieving the dream of home ownership. And it's important to take your budget seriously and ensure it aligns with the lifestyle you want without being overly restrictive. You don't want to be eating 2-minute noodles or baked beans for 6 months. Now, if your 180 days needs to be shifted to 210 days so that you can maintain a comfortable lifestyle, so be it. You are still on your way. The next thing to become guarded about is to look after your headspace. And I can assure you that once you start on this journey, you're going to become bombarded with daily messages about buying a home or about mortgages and about money in general. And these messages are going to challenge your beliefs around how you feel about money and the value you place on buying your first home. And so you've got to consider, are you taking notice of the messaging that helps you with your decision to buy your first home, or are you taking notice of the messages that can sidetrack you off your plan? The next thing you should start thinking about is, what are the things that you can do to add to your savings habit? I don't care who you are and at what stage of life you're in, it is normal for human beings to accumulate stuff that they don't need or never use. And so the next step to start looking around your house and your garage and start identifying things that you can put up for sale and sell. It's common for us to have updated to the latest iPhone or iPad and to leave the old one just gathering dust in the cupboard at home. And remember, every $100, $200 or $300 that you can get into that bank account helps. Now, I know myself that I recently upgraded my iPhone to the latest model. However, my old phone works perfectly well. It's just not the current one. And I surprised myself recently by going online to see that my old phone was selling secondhand for around $700. Now, if I was on that $205 a day a saving strategy and was short $30 each day in my budget, just selling my secondhand phone for $700 covers my $30 a day shortfall for a massive 23 days. And so it's my bet that if you looked around your own home and your storage area and your garage, you would find things that you can sell online really easily that will give you $4,000 or $5,000 of extra money that you can put into that savings account now. And now you're not going to be motivated to do this without a plan and a budget. So I do hope you're starting to see its importance as the centerpiece that you build on to achieve your objectives. Now, many of you may have credit cards or car loans, and you might be thinking, wow, if we could get rid of these high interest debts, we would be better off. Now, that may well be the case. However, I don't want you to focus on those things at the moment. But what I do want you to do is to grab your credit cards and, regardless of what their balance is, make a commitment to stop spending someone else's money. People say to me, oh, I have to have a credit card. You don't, actually. You've just got to learn to live within what you earn. And because the interest that is being charged, especially if you only pay the minimum monthly balance on your credit card, is phenomenal. Most credit cards are around 20% interest on the outstanding balance. And remember, credit cards are expensive, and that's why I teach my clients some very clever strategies about how to eliminate their high interest debt in a very short period of time. And for every $1,000 on a credit card, that usually equates to around $6,000 less that you can borrow. So a $15,000 credit card means $90,000 less in a loan for a home loan. So they are very detrimental to your borrowing ability. And people don't realize, they go, oh, I've got these high limit cards, but it's crazy. And they really do hurt, even if you don't use them. So please. And by extinguishing your high interest debt, that you end up doing is increasing the amount of money that you can potentially borrow for your home loan. And now, apart from step 1, which focused on goal setting, we have also covered savings and budgeting in step 2 and 3, which moves us on to the next step. And step 4 is to look at home loans. So what amount do you qualify for and how much is the repayment going to be? People think that all lenders are the same. That is not correct. While the product might look and sound the same, each lender has their lending criteria, which means for you, the potential first-time buyer, going to the right bank that is looking for a customer with your financial profile could mean the difference between getting an extra $50,000 to $70,000 extra that you can borrow. One of the education pieces that I give my first home buyer clients is to understand which bank they should be going to based on their financial profile. So the house that they want to buy and the amount that they want to borrow. The bottom line is knowing which banks to go to can mean the difference between getting a yes and getting a no on your application. And I had a couple of clients come to me who are both on big high incomes, 180, 190,000, a couple, both of them earning plenty, and they'd been rejected twice and they couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe it. And they were right, because they'd been with what they wanted to achieve to the wrong lender for them. And as soon as I said, that's why you wouldn't go there and that's why you wouldn't go there, and they couldn't work it out from shopping online. So we were able to help them. And the fifth step that I want you to know is, once you do find the bank or lender and you do get your pre-approval, one thing about pre-approvals I want to assure you is, in educating yourself on this process though, not all pre-approvals are of the same value. A lot of them are just whatever you feed the machine. They're not actually assessed, and you do have to be careful about that. So you might say, oh, I've got a pre-approval from a bank, but that depends on the lender. They might not have actually looked at you at all. And one of the big skills, though, that I really want to teach you is making an offer on a home and dealing with real estate agent or a seller. And it's hugely important. The skill of knowing how to deal with a real estate agent and their negotiating tactics that can be the determining consideration as to whether you pay one price for the home or another. And I often educate my clients on what they should say to agents when they're making an offer to buy a home. And this advice arms them from falling into the trap where they might pay 20 or 30 or more for the home they needed to, just because they knew how to negotiate. And I had a client very recently, and she said, oh, the agent said, do you think I could offer another 10? And she said, that's way under what we thought we'd have to pay. And I said, no, the fact that he's asked you that means he's going to sell to you anyway. So we went back with a very low offer, and she was delighted, saved thousands more. So put in the chat, do you think a real estate agent is acting in your best interest, or the home seller's best interest, or maybe even their own? What do you think? Yes, that's what I think too. Thanks, Nicole and Donna. It's true. And people don't realize real estate agents can be paid and compete against other agents in their same agency. It can make it really difficult for them. So unfortunately, you can't believe everything that you're told, regardless of how genuine you might think the real estate agent that you're dealing with is. And when you know the rules of the game, which I make sure that all of my first home buyer clients do, understand before putting an offer on the table, you command the position of power. And buying your home for the right price, rather than the price that a real estate agent leads you to believe is the minimum that the vendor will accept, is the key to getting into a home which you once thought you couldn't afford. And so, as you will see, the quest to home ownership comes with following each of these important steps. Success is firmly anchored in understanding each of these steps. Is knowing how to create, we need you to know how to create a timeline and a deadline for your goal of home ownership. It's the understanding it is anchored in knowing how much money you need to save as the deposit, and which bank or lender is best suited to your financial profile and to the type of home that you want to buy. Success is also anchored in knowing how to construct an effective budget and cash flow projection, so that you are never left in a situation of not having the money to do the things that you want to do while you're trying to save for a deposit. There are so many people I speak to each week that think they don't have enough saved to go ahead with a home purchase. But when they learn about the different deposits needed from the different banks, they often go from, I'm still a long way off, to being able to go and buy the house of their dreams the next day. And that happens because they acquire the knowledge and the education and strategy by working with me. And by following these 5 steps, I promise you that regardless of your situation, you can get into a home that maybe today you think is somewhat of an impossibility. Remember, the 5 steps are all built on a foundation of understanding the importance of connecting with your goal. And for the purpose of the revision, here are the 5 steps again. Set a goal and commit to a deadline, and create a time-based strategy to hit your goal. determine what type of home you're going to buy, how much it's going to cost, and how much money you're going to need to have saved in order to get into that home within the next 30 to 180 days. Become educated on the smartest and most practical way of saving and accessing the deposit and other assistance packages that can help you bring forward the day that you are ready to buy. Put yourself in the best position to qualify for the maximum amount of money that you can borrow from a bank or lender. Develop an action plan to be in a position to make an offer and buy your first home. And so these are the 5 key steps that you need to follow in order to find yourself in a position as the 3 case studies that I showed you earlier in the presentation. Okay, so now we are in the stage in the webinar when you really need to make a decision about what your next steps. However, I'd like you to consider the 2 alternatives that you have. So option 1 is to go it alone and keep doing what you've been doing up until now. And of course, you can go online and make lots of phone calls. And hopefully after spending a lot of time making sure that you have all the tools and knowledge that you need at your fingertips, you might be able to turn the dream of owning your first home into a reality. Or option 2 is to come and work with me on implementing each of those 5 steps in a methodical way so that you can accelerate the time frame and overcome the many obstacles to make the dream of owning your first home become a reality. And so my question to you is this one. Let me know in the chat which option is likely to get you into your own home faster, option 1 or option 2. 2. Thank you, Thora. Yes, thank you. 2. I can see lots of people picking 2 into the chat. And so this is the point in the webinar that I alluded to at the start, where I'm going to tell you how you can come and work with me and learn all there is to know about how to save, how to develop a strategy, and create a roadmap that is going to take you from where you are today to signing on the dotted line and picking up your keys to your first home.